Hey guys, right, we're back with chapter 15, and because chapter 15 and 16 are really short, I'm going to squidge them together, and we're getting quite close to the end of the book now. Okay, so the battle at Death's Head Headland. While Hiccup and his team had been enraging the Green Death, Thuggery and his team had been infuriating the Purple Death. The two monsters ran smack into one another as they met at the corner of Death's Head's headland. One of Fireworm's wings was broken in two places from her experience in the Green Death's grip, but she bravely flew back and made her final speech into his ear as he sat gasping for air in the shallows. "Here he is," shouted Fireworm, "my master, the purple horror, who will tear you limb from limb and spit out your toenails." And Fireworm flew away lopsidedly as fast as she could, with one wing trailing behind her. The Green Death was having a bad day. Ordinarily, a Three Dragonus Giganticus Maximus would not dream of attacking another animal of the same breed. They would avoid fighting each other because they know they are so heavily armed that the battle risks ending in death for both of them. However, the Green Death had been attacked and jeered by the minuscule creatures who had inflamed and outraged his vanity. This creature, who seemed to think he was tougher than the Green Death himself, had struck him heavily in the chest. The Green Death wasn't thinking too hard. He leapt to the Purple Death with his talons outstretched, breathing great bursts of fire, which lit up the landscapes around like lightning. The ground and the sea shook in earthquakes as the two gigantic monsters lunged crazily at each other, swearing the most unrepeatable oaths in Dragonese. The Green Death's foot completely destroyed Wrecker's Reef with one blow. The Purple Death's wings caused great landslides to come tumbling down from the headland's cliffs. Now their job was done. The Viking boys were running away as fast as they could, their eyes popping with terror in case one of the dragons survived the fight. Every now and then they looked back to see how the battle was going. With ghastly eerie cries, the dragons slashed and bit and tore pieces off one another. The sea dragon is the most well-defended creature that has ever lived on this earth. Its skin is over 3 feet thick in places and so encrusted with shells and barnacles that it almost has the effect of armour. It is also the most well-armed creature that's ever lived on this planet, and its razor-sharp claws and teeth can rip open its own iron crust as if it was made out of paper. Now both dragons had terrible wounds, and their green lifeblood was pouring out of them. The Green Death gripped the Purple Death around the neck with deadly throat-catcher grip. The Purple Death hugged the Green Death around the chest with a deadly breath-quencher hug. Neither would let go. And the grip of a dragon is a terrible thing. They reminded Hiccup of a picture on one of his father's shields of 2 dragons forming a perfect circle as they ate one another, each with a tail in their mouth. The dragons thrashed around wildly in the surf, gagging and choking, and their eyes popped with their tails, such tidal waves that the boys were soaked, even though they were scrambling away from the headland as fast as they could. Finally, with some last heaving shudders and grim gurgles, both mighty beasts lay still in the water. There was silence. The boys stopped running. They stood gasping for breath, watching the motionless beasts with dread. The boys' dragons were flying some way ahead of the boys, also turned and hung still in the air. The terrible creatures didn't move. The boys waited 2 long minutes as waves lapped gently over the great motionless bodies. "They're dead," said Thuggery at last. The boys started laughing rather hysterically. Now that the terror was over, "Well done, Hiccup!" Thuggery slapped Hiccup on the back. But Hiccup was looking worried. He was squinting his eyes and straining to hear something. "I can't hear anything," said Hiccup anxiously. "You can't hear anything because they're dead," said Thuggery joyfully. 3 cheers for Hiccup! Halfway through the boys' cheering, Fireworm let out a terrible noise. "Dessert!" she screamed. "Dessert! Dessert! Dessert!" The head of the corpse of the Green Death was slowly lifting up and turning in their direction. "Uh-oh!" said Hiccup. Chapter 16. The fiendishly clever plan goes wrong. Hiccup had been listening for the Green Death's song, but he wasn't singing it yet. The Green Death was dying, but it wasn't dead yet. What he was very, very angry indeed. Out of his bleeding mouth he hissed weakly, "Where is he?" And then he heaved himself onto his feet and hissed a little more strongly, "Where is he? Where is the little supper I knew I recognised him. He was my doom. No wonder the little supper has made supper of me, the Green Death himself. As the dragon spoke, he was inching forwards very slowly and painfully, his eyes fixed on the cliff top, where he could see a little human beings beginning to run inland again. The dragon threw back his head and screamed, a blood-chilling scream of pure horrid revenge, and dark, torturous. I'll supper him before I go, I will, said the dragon, and he leapt forward. Run! Shouted Hiccup, but everybody was already running as fast as they could. In the distance, Hiccup could see 400 warriors from the tribes and hooligans of Meathead coming towards them from the highest point. They must have wondered the boys' absence and come to find them. But they won't get out in time, thought Hiccup. And even if they do, what can they do? Just then the dragon landed with a crash on the cliff top, and suddenly the sun was blotted out. 20 boys ran towards the shelter of the ferns. The dragon picked up the nearest one claw and turned him over. It was Dog's Breath. By the time the dragon had tossed him aside, muttering, Not you, the other boys had disappeared into the bracken. The dragon was sick, but he laughed weakly. You are not safe there. Oh, no. Though I can't see you to kill you, I can use my fire. The bracken caught fire with the dragon's breath, and the boys ran out of it as fast as they could. Hiccup stayed in a little longer because he knew the dragon was waiting for him. Finally, the heat became unbearable, and he took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and ran out into the open. He had hardly run 100 yards before 2 of the dragon's talons closed around his middle and lifted up, way, way up, so the other boys looked like they were specks beneath him. The dragon held Hiccup in front of him with a We are both supper now, little supper, he said, and he tossed Hiccup high, high into the air. As Hiccup somersaulted for the second time, he thought to himself, now this really is the worst moment of my life. Then he was falling. He looked down. There was the dragon's mouth, wide open, like a great black cavernous tunnel. He was going to fall into it. End of chapter 16. Hiccup surely cannot come out alive from this. Can he? See you for chapter 17.